12:01, so we're going to get started just with respect to time. So I want to just thank everyone for joining our informational webinar today for the 2025 Knauss Fellowship. What we're going to do is walk through our agenda, and then we'll get started talking about the fellowship program and answer questions throughout. What I want to quickly plug before we do some introductions of who's joining us today from California Sea Grant is I want to inform all of you that following the end of the webinar today at 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, the National Office is going to be hosting a Knauss 101. And you can see on the slide deck here that they have a couple of webinars coming up. And one is today at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to talk with and hear from Knauss alumni, I actually encourage all of you to register for this webinar to go to right after today's webinar, or you can go to December 21st or the January 9th event. So I believe Tanya is going to drop in the registration link for all of you in our webinar chat. So just to kind of plug that now, so if you want to go and join the registration right now, and then you can join in an hour right following this webinar, I really encourage all of you to do that, especially if you want to hear from Knauss alumni and really answer those specific experience questions with folks who have gone through the program. So a few housekeeping items. The way we're going to run our webinar today is we're going to utilize the Q&A chat function. So if you have a question, please feel free to drop your question in that Q&A box. We're not going to use any hand raising or chat functions today. And what we're going to do is address your questions throughout the webinar. So we're going to have 1 hour together. So I'll go through some slides, but feel free if you have a question regarding a certain slide to enter it in the Q&A, and we'll take pauses kind of throughout the different sections of our webinar so we can answer those as we move along. And if you have a question at the end, you're welcome to ask as well. We'll just end promptly at 1 p.m., especially for those who want to go join the Knauss 101 webinar. We are going to be recording this webinar today, and it'll be posted later on the RFA on our website. So if you want to go back and rewatch the webinar, you're welcome to do so. And then, of course, it's going to be available for folks who aren't able to attend live. The last thing I'm going to plug is if you have really specific questions, maybe you don't want others to be privy to, or just regarding your own application experience, we're going to encourage you to email sgproposal@ucsd.edu. Myself and those who are on the webinar today who we're going to do introductions for in just a moment, we monitor that email. And so we're happy to answer one-on-one questions. We're happy to meet via Zoom just to talk a little bit more about specifics. So hyper-related questions, we're going to ask that you actually just direct those to that email address. Okay, so before our agenda, let me do some introductions. So I'll start with myself. My name is Delaney Medina, and I am the Fellowship Program Coordinator with California Sea Grant. So I work specifically on the science integration team in coordinating our many fellowship opportunities. For the Knauss Fellowship, we really tackle that program as a team because it is a really long and extensive program in terms of the application process and working with our national office. But my role is coordinating our fellowships and so sort of supporting our science integration branch of our whole Sea Grant program, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then we also have Tanya Torres joining us. She's our one of our staff research associates. So Tanya helps support the science integration team as well. And she also has a lot of her work focused in microplastics for research supporting a lot of our efforts at California Sea Grant. And we also have Leon Guo joining us today. Leon, did you want to introduce yourself or? Wonderful.
Sure, I'm happy to. Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Leon Guo. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the research coordinator at California Sea Grant and looking forward to seeing your questions about Knauss.
Awesome. Thanks, Leon. All right. So today's agenda, so what we're going to do is provide a background around California Sea Grant, and then we're going to dive into talking about the Knauss Marine Policy Fellowship, and then we'll go into specifics about eligibility, the application, and how to apply specifically through the state of California. We'll also talk a little bit about the evaluation criteria. And today's webinar is really focused on applying from the perspective of a California Sea Grant applicant. The national office has a plethora of resources and opportunities to ask them questions that are maybe more specific to certain scenarios you might be in if you're an international student. And also they are going to be giving more updates on timelines and just host offices as those start to appear within this next year. But, we'll really focus on it from the California perspective today and answering your questions. And at the end, we'll talk about the timeline. And I encourage you to ask questions throughout using our Q&A function. All right. And also Tanya is going to be dropping in links in our webinar chat. So right now she just dropped the most up-to-date details on the Knauss Fellowship opportunity through our website. So feel free to click there and, it gives instructions on how to apply and information that's coming down from the national office. We're updating it there on our webpage. So feel free to click that link to look around as we go through our chat today. All right, so what is Sea Grant? Who is California Sea Grant? So we're part of a large national network of 34 university-based programs. And we were enacted in 1966, and we actually were modeled after the Land Grant Act of 1862. So essentially the goal of the Sea Grant network is to maintain a healthy coastal environment and economy. And that's along all of the coastal states, the Great Lakes states, and we also have Sea Grant programs in our US territories in Puerto Rico and Guam. And we also have a US-Korea partnership for an international Sea Grant program. So we're a really large network. And in California, we are California Sea Grant. However, there is also USC Sea Grant. That's based at the University of Southern California. So if you're joining our webinar today and you're based up in the LA area, you're welcome to apply through the USC Sea Grant program. You're also welcome to apply through the California Sea Grant program. So those are specific questions we're happy to answer one-on-one. You can always send those to the SG proposal email. But there are two Sea Grant programs based in the state of California. And how do we ensure that we're maintaining healthy coastal ecosystems and really boosting the coastal economy? We do that through initiation and support of many of our programs in research, extension, education, fellowships, and the real big goal of our fellowships is workforce development. So that's something we'll touch on in a little bit. But us specifically at California Sea Grant, we're actually based at the University of California, San Diego, and we're on Scripps Institution of Oceanography's campus. So myself and actually Tanya and Leon, we have some wonderful backgrounds showing where we are here in La Jolla. But that is the university that we are based out of. So again, USC Sea Grant's based up at USC in LA. We're down in La Jolla here at the University of California, San Diego. So California Sea Grant has a few focus areas. We have three areas that we call our topical focus areas. So those are in sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, healthy coastal ecosystems, and resilient communities and economies. And the way we approach our topical work, we do that through some cross-cutting approaches. So some of those are our diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and access approach. So really looking at our topical focus areas through the lens of DASIA. And we also ensure that we're looking at it through an environmental literacy and workforce development lens. So looking for those opportunities to boost our coastal economy through jobs, through policy change, and really understanding what are the needs of coastal communities in California. A lot of this can be detailed in our strategic plan that is available on our website. And our strategic plan comes down from the national office through NOAA, through what is known as our omnibus, which is our large federal funding package that we really detail our initiatives through. So what do we do specifically? Sort of what is our vision at California Sea Grant, and how do we make our mission come to life? So we do that through grants and funding. We run a lot of large research proposals that are competitive, that a lot of California universities and researchers apply for to receive funding for their research initiatives. We run fellowships like the Knauss Fellowship. And then we do a lot of work through our extension program. So our extension program and our communications programs really allow us to reach communities all along the state of California and connect with local industries, nonprofits, communities to really understand what are the needs of people along the coast here. All right, so let's start diving into fellowships, and then we're going to go right into the Knauss Fellowship. So holistically, what is the goal of a Sea Grant Fellowship? We've got two main goals. So the first one is we strive for a diverse, environmentally literate California. So from local communities to formal decision makers on the policy level. We want to ensure that they have access to the best information to engage in informed personal choices, participatory decision-making, and community planning across the state. And so to ensure that this is a goal that can actually happen, that is where the fellowships come in with fellows that we are trying to really develop as young professionals. So creating a diverse, skilled, and environmentally literate workforce that's prepared to build prosperous livelihoods in a changing world while addressing critical local, regional, and national needs through traditional and innovative careers. And the Knauss Fellowship, of course, does that on the national level, and we'll dive into that in a little bit. So where does the Knauss Fellowship fall on our sort of fellowship opportunities, specifically to California Sea Grant? And I always like to share this because as we go through this webinar, you'll really gain an understanding of the time investment in the Knauss Fellowship, but also become aware of the other opportunities that we have. So you can see that our Knauss Fellowship falls within those who are in a graduate program. And it falls under what is our policy fellowships. So you can see the timeline I'm sharing here on our slide deck, that it's one of 3 policy fellowships that we do offer, and it's on the national level. We do have a state fellowship program that we've modeled after Knauss, but today we're going to focus on Knauss for everybody. And lastly, and then I believe, thank you, Tanya. Tanya's gone ahead and shared a link so you can learn more about all the fellowships that we offer. But fellows is an interesting term. You're different from an employee, a student, an intern, a volunteer. Fellows are really gaining hands-on experience, and you're being trained as a young professional. So who is a fellow? It's a highly motivated and talented recent graduate student with a focus in marine or aquatic research. So you're getting substantial professional skills, and you're also contributing those professional skills to host offices across the whole nation. So you're capable of working alongside state and federal partners, and a fellow is excited to learn about and help with the process of policymaking and resource management. So the Knauss Marine Policy Fellowship, this was established by National Sea Grant in 1979, and this is a 1-year fellowship program, and that it's located in Washington, D.C. So the application is due February of next year, which we'll go into details about. The actual fellowship starts in 2025 on February 1st. So we are still in 2023. So when I said this is a long process, this is a long process that you are committing yourself to in terms of your engagement and the application process and the timelines working with our office and the National Sea Grant Office. National Sea Grant anticipates funding no less than 35 applicants. And that is sort of representative to the 34 plus 1 with our US Korea program Sea Grant network across the nation. So no less than 35 applicants. So how many Knauss fellows have been placed? So 1,577 fellows have been placed with the Knauss program since 1979. And this is a really great breakdown just to show you those have been placed in the US Congress, different federal departments and agencies, and the amount of our alumni that go on to work in the federal government. And this picture on the left here is when matching was done virtually to show how they were able to show all of the matches they received at the end of the whole application process. But the Knauss Fellowship specifically, it provides a really unique educational and professional experience to graduate students who have an interest in ocean, coastal, and Great Lakes resources on the national level. So you're working within the executive or legislative branch of the US government. And this here shows a little bit of a breakdown of the different state programs for 2024 and how many finalists moved on and were accepted as a fellow with the national office. So I'll get in a little bit further on about sort of what that process looks like, what it means to be a finalist, and exactly at what point would a finalist become a fellow, and the chances. But this shows the breakdown. With the California Sea Grant program, we actually send 6 finalists to the national office. So that's after going through our interview process, our application review, and we make a decision and we send 6 finalists to National Sea Grant. And then from that point forward, the process looks a little different, which I can go further into a little bit later. But you can just see all of the participating programs here on this slide. And thank you, Tanya. So if you want to learn more about where fellows have been placed, we have an alumni webpage that Tanya just shared in our chat. You're welcome to check out. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the host. I do want to preface this with saying that the 2025 Knauss hosts have not been announced, and they're not going to be announced for a while. So I'm going to just give you a brief overview of who the hosts are in terms of the Knauss program and some past examples. But we're going to have to wait a little bit until hosts are actually announced. And that information comes down from the national office. And that is something that we'll update on our webpage. So, you know, throughout your experience in applying for this program, I encourage you to frequently check the National Sea Grant Office's Knauss Fellowship webpage, as well as our California Sea Grant webpage for those updates, to see when those when that host information is available to you. But it does take some time. So at this moment, that information is not available. However, hosts will either be with the legislative branch of the US government or the executive branch of the US government. Now, if you're in the executive branch, we've had many fellows placed with the executive branch. More fellows are placed with the executive branch than the legislative branch. So this is really project focused in a coordinator role. You're working across many agencies, some of those federal agencies, and this is very focused in that marine policy field that we've been talking about. So these are some past examples of some of the agencies that you can expect within the executive branch. So we've got NOAA, we have the EPA, Marine Mammal Commission, the US Global Change Research Program, NSF. So it really just depends on which host apply and what opportunities become available. So that recruitment actually has just started with the national office. They're now starting to recruit their host. So again, that's going to take a little bit of time to get that information, but this gives you just kind of an overview of who you could expect to be potential host for Knauss. Now, the legislative branch, working on hot topics, advocacy policies might not always be 100% focused in ocean, Great Lakes work. However, you're still working in terms of policy in science and environmental issues within the United States. So this would be in the US House of Representatives or the state Senate. And that's going to be maybe different committees, personal offices, state or House of Reps, like I mentioned, majority and minority offices. And this slide's really great because on the left, it just shows you an example of what are some of those detailed legislative committees or offices that you could potentially be working with or placed with. And then on the right side, these are also some more detailed examples of past executive hosts for the 2024 and 2023 Knauss Fellowship programs. But this is just to, again, give you a brief overview of who you could potentially expect, or examples as well, to kind of sort of help give a clearer understanding. All right, and Tanya just dropped a really great link that takes you to the National Sea Grants webpage. And I really encourage all of you, you can actually click to see the 2024 placements. So those placements have been made, and you can see where all of the 2024 Knauss Fellows are going to be hosted for their fellowship program. So you can click on their individual photos to see their placements and what Sea Grant program they came from, or there is a link that you can just click and it'll actually give a whole overview table for everybody. So I really encourage you all to click and look around that webpage, again, to learn about the 2024 host to get a sense of who could be hosting in 2025. All right. Okay, so we're going to go into applicant eligibility, the application package. So again, if you have questions, I encourage you to drop them in our Q&A. We're happy to answer them as we go along. So the application eligibility. So any student is qualified for the Knauss program, regardless of citizenship. Something to note, if you are a non-US citizen, it's going to be on you to ensure that you are acquiring the right visas to work for the Knauss program. So that is something that will be worked out much further down the line, if and when you were to become a Knauss finalist, and then also understanding what host office you could be placed with, because there are some restrictions with certain host agencies. If they are a federal agency, there are restrictions in place for international students. So that's something, if you are an international student, that you're going to want to really look into. But who is eligible for this program? So the student is enrolled towards a degree in a graduate program. So that can be a master's, a PhD, or a JD at any point between the onset of the 2023 fall term, or if you're on the quarter system, trimester, and the state application deadline. So that would be, for us, that's going to be February 2024. So that's coming up here very shortly. The graduate degree will be awarded through an accredited institution of higher education in the United States or US territories. And the student has an interest in ocean, coastal, and Great Lakes resources, and the national policy decisions affecting those resources. So this is really thinking nationally and starting to think about your application perspective in terms of your own career goals, and the why behind a Knauss fellowship. Why Knauss specifically? Why the national level specifically in terms of your interest in a fellowship with Sea Grant? So for California Sea Grant, we submit through the EC Grant program. Every state has their own EC Grant, is what we call. And I'll show you screenshots of what that looks like, but it's linked on our website. So there's instructions, but you do create your own login and you apply through there. And it gives you step-by-step all of the forms you have to fill out and everything that is required of you in terms of an application package. Now, if you're joining our webinar today and maybe you're not in the state of California, what is going to be important is to ensure that where you're earning your degree in, what state, what university, that's the university, that's the state you're going to apply through. So if you're a graduate student at UC Davis, that means that your graduate program takes place at a university in the state of California. So you would be applying through the California Sea Grant program or the USC Sea Grant program. Again, it's up to you depending on which program you want to apply through and which makes most sense for you. If you happen to be in a state that is not a coastal state and does not have a Sea Grant program, that's when you will reach out to the national office and they will assist you in understanding which state program you should apply through. So don't make assumptions if you are in the state of Arizona that means you apply through the California Sea Grant program. We really encourage you, if you are in a state and your state does not have a Sea Grant program, that you contact the national office to find out which program you should apply through. And that information is on their website, clearly stated. There's an email that is there. So again, make sure you gather that information before you start investing your time in creating an account through a state program until you've confirmed that at the national office. So the application package. So there's going to be a CV, and that is going to be 2 pages or less. So this is your experience within 2 pages, really outlining your, your program that you're in, your past experience, and understanding how to curate this so that it all fits into 2 pages, which can be really difficult depending on what stage of your career that you're in. But it is really important that you follow all of the page requirements, all of the font, or not font, but all of the page requirements and the number of text requirement, and ensuring that you are checking all of your boxes, that you have all of your application materials, exactly what is being asked for. There's going to be a goal statement, and this will speak about your experiences. Maybe you've had past fellowship experiences, career experiences that contribute to your sort of your eligibility as a standout candidate for Knauss. Your goals for the fellowship. If you attend an alumni webinar with the national office, you're going to hear alumni tell you that you need to be really, really specific and detailed. You have to, understand that you're not only competing within the state of California against applicants, but if you make it to a finalist, you're also then kind of competing for that wonderful host placement with all of the other Sea Grant program finalists as well. So being very specific to your experience and your goals is going to really create a standout application for yourself. Another part of this goal statement is just talking about any obstacles you've experienced throughout your life. Those can be professional obstacles, those can be personal. I think folks who really touch on their personal experiences and how that's really shaped their career and their academic career is going to be really beneficial to you as well. As I'm going through this project narrative and talking about your application, I might not get as detailed because we're actually going to be hosting a application workshop in January. So if you really want some detailed one-on-one help and an opportunity to workshop maybe your own application or kind of see through the lens of our reviewers here at California Sea Grant, I'm going to really encourage you all to attend that webinar, which I'll provide information for at the end of this webinar. So you'll have a whole goal statement. We're also going to be asking for your unofficial transcripts from your undergraduate and graduate programs. So those are really important that you provide those. And one other thing is recommendations. So letters of recommendation. These are really important, and you have to ensure that you're sending these to your letter writers on time, giving them ample time to write you a solid letter. The one kind of caveat with the Knauss program is the application happens during the holidays. And so it's really important that you're giving your letter writers enough time to acknowledge that they're going to write a letter for you, but also making sure they're writing you a really solid recommendation. And that's really tough during this time of year. So to kind of break down that obstacle and barrier for you, make sure you're giving them ample time to write you a wonderful letter. One last thing that's required, but that's on our end, is once we run our applications through our review process, your written applications, we select who we want to interview. It's potential we could interview all applicants. It depends on how many we receive for the California Sea Grant program. But our director will then write a director letter for those finalists we send to the national office. So the national office has informed all of you to reach out to California Sea Grant and to inform us that you're applying. Maybe you've provided a little bit of background of your experience and to connect with us about the application process. And a part of that is also to start building that professional relationship so we can get to know who you are. So if you do perhaps get through our review process and we have an interview with you and we choose our 6 finalists, our director is able to write that recommendation letter for the finalists to send up to the national level. And so that is what the director letter is. And that's again submitted by the program. So that is not something you have to solicit or you have to worry about. Again, as we go through, you'll potentially reach a point in time if you are a finalist with California that that's when that letter happens. All right, so the biggest application tip I can give you is you have to view it like a giant puzzle. All of these pieces have to come together holistically to really represent who you are and why you want a Knauss fellowship and how it would benefit you and how do your prior experiences really lean into what you could contribute to the fellowship program. So it's really important to think of all of these pieces. They have to come together. So maybe you're stronger in your application, maybe you're stronger in your interview. So I really encourage all of you to have professionals that are a part of your network to review your application materials, to walk through potential interview questions. But all of these are really, really important to your application package. All right. So getting all of those tips and tricks and help all leads to understanding how your application is evaluated at California Sea Grant. So in the goal statement, again, being specific, direct, concise, while discussing what the applicant would bring to the fellowship program. So it's a balance of what do you want to gain in terms of experience, but what are you bringing to a host office? Are your career life goals clearly stated? And what do your experiences look like up until this point? Do you have a breadth of experience in terms of variety in maybe policy, research, science, outreach, communications, and understanding how your achievements up until this point relate to the Knauss program? What can you bring to the Knauss program as an individual? And then this kind of touches on maybe your personal background. So does the applicant bring a diverse perspective to the program? Have you had to bring that diverse perspective to other programs or fellowships or workforce experiences you've had thus far? And does the applicant demonstrate an interest or a commitment to the Sea Grant mission and values of DASIA? So diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and accessibility. So it's really important to think about that as our cross-cutting sort of approach to our topical areas of focus with California Sea Grant, but ensuring that it's one of yours as well, and understanding that you're also looking through that lens when thinking about your own personal experience, but also what kind of young professional you're going to be with the Knauss program. Okay, so what do the point breakdowns look like for your application? So the entire application package is 110 points. So your CV is worth 10 points. Your personal education and career development is 65 points. So that is a huge amount, the largest point value for all of the different parts of your application. Your relevant coursework and future year plans is 10 points. You're going to solicit 2 letters of recommendation. That'll be 5 points each. The director's letter is 5 points. And the overall cohesion. So again, looking at it as a giant puzzle, because there is 10 points dedicated to that. Does your application feel cohesive? Do they all, are you communicating the same point throughout all of your different parts? So does your CV show all of your experience that you're talking about in your career goals and what you could bring to a fellowship? So that's what the cohesion part is. All right. So what I'm going to show you is how we submit applications through our California Sea Grant program, and it's through eSea Grant. So this here shows what the landing page for eSea Grant looks like. And you can see that when you go and click eSea Grant, and Tanya's already been wonderful and dropped that in the chat for everybody, that you're going to be registering. So you're going to be filling in the information here on the register part. And you'll put your name and affiliation, and then you'll be able to create your account and you'll enter into eSea Grant. So eSea Grant is where we update with all of our fellowship opportunities. It's our reporting system. It's sort of our lifeline for many of our education and outreach sectors of our program. So what you'll do is you'll see funding opportunities, and this is where our open active funding opportunities exist. So you'll see the 2025 Knauss Fellowship here, and you're going to want to add that funding opportunity to your profile. And when you do add that funding opportunity, it's going to generate sort of an application ID for you. So that shows up on our end in our system. So we now know you are an applicant that has added that funding opportunity to your profile. And then what you'll see, it's going to generate the whole application for you, which you can see on the left-hand side of the eSea Grant portal here. And each of those sections you're going to be filling out. It might be questions you're filling out. There might be parts where you're uploading documents. So for your unofficial transcripts, that's going to be a section that you have to upload. For your letter writers, they actually will get sent their own eSea Grant link, which you'll do through here when you get to that section. And they actually submit the letter on their own, and it shows up in eSea Grant. So that is a notification that you'll receive. So you're not having to receive the letter of recommendation from your letter writers and upload it yourself. It's going to be uploaded on the letter writer's end. So they'll have their own eSea Grant login that they'll use to add their letters. So once you've done that, and let's say you filled out all of the 2025 Knauss application, you're going to see that there's a status for all funding opportunities, that number one, and it's going to say in progress. So this is where you can always go back to it to edit. Don't hit delete because that deletes your whole application package, but this is where you can obviously, your work gets saved, you can revisit it, so you're not having to fill out the application all at once. Once you've gone through everything, it's important to go back up to the academic information and click mark as complete. So as you're going through these different sections, the one thing I can really suggest and encourage you with EC Grant is to ensure you're checking the top of the page and scrolling down to the bottom to see if there's a save option, if you have to edit in order to actually edit the content, and if there's a mark as complete. So as you're editing these different sections, it's really important to ensure that you're saving them. As you move on to the next section, it might not save that information. So I really encourage you to take your time and ensure that you're not missing those important functions within the EC Grant portal. The last thing you're going to do is you're going to see on the left-hand side, you're going to go to the very, very bottom to your submission preview. So you can see this is an example for myself, and I can see that I have my sort of project ID for the 2025 Knauss application. And you're going to see it says not submitted in red. So this is where it's really important that you've checked all of your work. You know you've uploaded everything that you need to. Your letter writers have submitted, and this is when you can click submit. So this is, again, a really important step to ensure that you actually submit your application. So checking to see that it's not just in progress, but it's been submitted. Something I do want to really note with EC Grant is your application is due February 15th, 2024 by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We cannot receive late applications. The system closes the application at that time, and EC Grant can become overwhelmed if a lot of folks are on the server trying to submit applications at the same time. So as I encourage you to obviously check everything and give yourself ample time to pause and make sure you have your whole application complete, it's really important that you're not waiting until the last minute to click submit, because when you click submit, it doesn't mean it's going to just go within a few seconds. There are times it can take a few minutes if it is really busy. And let's say you're submitting and it is 4:55 p.m. on February 15th. And if you are still submitting and it hits 5 p.m., it's going to close the application. And we don't want that to happen to anybody. So give yourself a couple days in advance to submit your application before the deadline. Because again, we are not able to submit, or we are not able to accept late applications because the system closes the application. So at that point, there's nothing that we're able to do. Throughout using EC Grant, if you have questions, it is a new system, so I understand things take time and might not always be intuitive. Please email us. It's the SG proposal email. You can always ask us questions, and we can, of course, work through any issues you might be having. So that's what that email is for, is to ask those questions about the EC Grant portal. And someone from our science integration team will respond. So that would be myself, Leon, or Tanya that would respond to you and to help walk you through the process. And thank you, Tanya. She dropped the email again for all of you in the webinar chat. So as we are talking about when the applications due, let's kind of look at what does the rest of the process look like. So this is a very, very high level timeline. On the National Sea Grants website for the Knauss Fellowship, they have a wonderful Knauss student guide. And the Knauss student guide is going to be your one-stop shop for really getting all of the most up-to-date information. So this is going to be where you have more updated timelines. And of course, we're checking this and making sure we're updating our timelines as well. But that's going to be where you get the quickest up-to-date timelines in terms of placement week and when hosts are announced, and any maybe changes that might occur. All right. So I see we do have a question. And it's from Erica. So I see that a requirement is having been accepted to a graduate program before application deadline. I wanted to clarify if applying during fall 2024 for a fall 2025 would be acceptable. So if you're applying during fall 2024, that means that you would be a 2026 Knauss fellow. So let me go back to the eligibility for Erica here. And actually, I want to read from here. So you have to be, so the student is enrolled towards a degree, and that's got to be at any point between the onset of now, as you're learning about this opportunity, and the state application deadline. Okay, great clarification. So you're thinking maybe ahead for the 2026 program. So yes, that answers your question then. Wonderful, Erica. Yeah, so some of you might be joining and you're realizing you're eligible for 2026. That's okay, you're getting early information so you can start preparing. All right. So let me go back to the timeline here. So what to expect. So we receive our applications and those close on February 15th. And then we begin our internal review process. So we are reviewing all of the applications with reviewers on our end. And as we do that, we're looking at all of the applications and deciding which applicants to interview. So during March is when that is occurring, that we are reviewing applications. We're reaching out to let you know that we'd like to interview you. And then in March is when we make a decision of who our 6 finalists are going to be for the California Sea Grant program. So we are allowed to send up to 6 finalists. We always aim to send 6 finalists, especially if we have many qualified applicants, which we always do. And we send those 6 finalists to National Sea Grant Office. And that is when our director, Shauna O, would be sending a letter with that application package for each individual finalist. So February, March is really important that you're checking your emails and checking your portal and staying in communication with us to see if you are moving on to an interview and also if you were selected as a finalist. In April is when the national office is reviewing all of the finalists that were sent to them from the different state programs. And they have their own review process that I encourage you to read through. That review process is going to be in the detailed NOFO. So that NOFO is available on their website as well. And it really breaks down their evaluation criteria and how they're reviewing all of the finalists that are being sent to them from all of the programs. Now in May is when the final selection happens, and June is the goal for when folks that are finalists are notified if they were selected to move on to the final stage of the program. So this is an interesting time. So if you are selected as a finalist with California Sea Grant, you are a finalist and you get sent to the national office. Your application package gets sent there. It is reviewed internally there, and then they select which finalists they want to accept into the Knauss program. I use the word accept lightly and with a gray area because that does not necessarily guarantee a match, but it's a pretty high probability that you will be matched if you are accepted as a finalist at the national office, because there are many host positions and they at that point you've invested a lot of time, they've invested a lot of time. So at that point it really is about fit and understanding which host office is going to be the good match for you. And also at that point, if you are still interested and available for the opportunity too, because again, this is happening in summer of next year. So this is a long time out. So this is touching back to when I talked about that this is a really rigorous process and it's a long time. And I understand that for many folks, this isn't the only opportunity that they're applying for. So really consider that the time investment in this is great. However, it is obviously a fantastic payout with a really incredible opportunity. So just keep that in mind that that's next summer. So it's a long ways out from now. So for placement, so there's been some updated information about placement week. So typically placement week does happen in November, December. And there are funds available to support you for placement week, so you're not paying for that out of pocket. But they actually updated a timeline. So it looks like for executive host, which there are more executive placements than there are legislative placements. Executive Placement Week is going to take place in October next year. Legislative Placement Week will take place in January. Now, you might be asking a question at this point, how do I know if I want to be placed with the executive branch or the legislative branch? Those are questions that are valid. However, it's too early to ask those questions. So I would just, that is something you want to wait for. And if you make it to the finalist stage, that's going to be information that'll be more clear, and you'll be provided with a much better understanding of how Placement Week works and how those discussions happen at the national level. So after all the placement weeks, the fellowship starts February 1st, 2025. So if you are an international student, it's really important that during sort of that fall and winter time, you are taking the steps to talk with the national office and understanding which work visas you need to get. And also understanding that if it is a federal agency, there are limitations that many of them cannot accept international students into the program. However, there are still many hosts that you can work with. So do not let that discourage you from applying. It's just going to be a little bit of extra legwork for you, but we are obviously available to help you through the process, and so is the national office. So someone asked a great question. So can you speak to who reviews and evaluates the applications at the California level? So we typically have folks on the science integration team, perhaps the fiscal team, our director. We ensure that each application gets no less than 3 reviewers. And those reviewers stay quiet with one another. So we are not sharing our review process with one another in terms of our initial feedback or sort of overall opinion on an applicant to ensure we're not creating bias. So we have our own process in place that we review all of the applications. We're using the same evaluation criteria, and we ensure that we, as an individual reviewer, are staying consistent with our reviewing. So once all of those reviews are submitted, those are done through eCgrant as well. So it's also done through a formalized process. We're submitting our scores through there. Then we can see all of the applicant scores from each of the reviewers. So each applicant would get 3 reviewers at least. And then we're able to compare all of those together. So yes, that was a great question. Another one is, I expect this varies year to year, but about how many applicants do you receive? Thanks for the info. Perhaps Tanya or Leon could answer this question for how many applications we tend to receive.
Leon might know more than I, but I know last year we got 16, and I think that was less than the year before, maybe more in like the 20s, but Leon might know more.
Yeah, I think the most we've ever gotten was like 40. So it does vary a lot year to year, just depending on what's going on. There was a really big boom after COVID, and then it's kind of come down from there. So I think in that realm of like 15 to 40. Big range, I know.
Thank you, Leon. And Leon dropped in the chat, and I kind of skipped on being more detailed on who at California Sea Grant. I mentioned it could be folks from the science integration team, maybe our fiscal team, even our extension team. So it could be any of our staff, but we also have Knauss alumni help review the applications as well. So it is a variety of folks that are a part of the review process. And we run many of our other fellowship applications the same way, with having alumni help us, because they bring a different perspective, obviously. So it creates that sort of variety and perspective for the different applications. Great. Okay. So great questions. We have about 10 minutes. So the last thing with the timeline, yes, your fellowship starts February 1st, 2025. And it is a 1-year fellowship program. So again, some detailed timelines. I really encourage you to look at the Knauss student guide on the Knauss fellowship webpage at the national office. They have really detailed dates, and those get updated on a regular basis. All right, so we have another question here. What is the best way to build a relationship with California Sea Grant as we put together our application materials to provide the director with enough information for the letter they will write? This is a great question, and I think it varies from person to person. I think some people are maybe have more confidence in their application package, and they're really strong writers. So that is one avenue for really letting us know who you are and giving us the opportunity to know who you are. Obviously, through your interview is another way, and being able to show a side of your personality and your ability to talk with people and engage. We obviously also ask people to reach out prior to let us know. But in terms of nitty gritty director level, and I'm glad Leon turned on her camera because I'm going to have them answer because they've been through the application process. So they've seen applicants apply, and they can understand sort of what's the best way to build a relationship and what does it actually look like.
Yeah, so I can speak a little more to this. Effectively, what we're planning to do this year as far as support prior to submitting application materials is we are happy to meet with you individually if needed. We also are having an application workshop, which Delaney referred to earlier, and is probably going to talk about a little bit more later, where we're hoping to provide some key guidance, advice on how to put together competitive application materials. The challenge is that, we have to provide the same amount of opportunity and support to every person who's interested in applying. So just given the number of applications we usually get, it's not really possible for every individual to meet with our director before the application process. And additionally, our director is not able to interview everyone. So we have a little bit of a different setup because we are a big program, a big state. Our science integration team really is the primary intersect, I guess, with applicants for the Knauss Fellowship. And so, as Delaney said, like your application materials and your interview, we ask you to highlight what are the things that really make you shine as an applicant, because we want to be able to speak to those in our director's letter that is added to your application. That being said, you are not able to modify your application if you are selected as a finalist when you go to the national competition stage. So really that's the role of the director's letter, is to help give a little bit more of a bump, another 5 points to ensure that we're trying to really champion your application and why we think that you are an amazing finalist. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit how much kind of direct interaction we have in the process.
Thanks, Leon. That was a great description. So absolutely, we're heavily involved in the process, and we are meeting incredibly regularly with our director during this. And so we, like Leon said, are sort of your one-stop shop for making sure you're getting that connection as well. There's another question I might have Leon or Tanya help answer. And it is, are there guidelines or anything to help determine if we should apply through USC or California Sea Grant? So Tanya or Leon maybe could provide just clearer context.
Yeah, typically in the past, folks who, as Delaney said earlier, are near the Los Angeles region or Santa Barbara typically apply through USC Sea Grant just because of the locality. However, you can technically, since you are in the state, apply to either program. I don't know the details of how many applications USC Sea Grant receives compared to us. I would say typically they have fewer applications than we get just because of their local focus. But other than that, I don't think that there's a lot of reason necessarily to pick one program over the other. Because we have more applicants, we do usually have a 2-tiered process of written review and then interviews, just because otherwise we can't interview everybody. But yeah, I guess it's just like it's also like, which Sea Grant would you like to represent? USC Sea Grant, California Sea Grant. Once you are a fellow, you would be representing our program. So, that's another aspect to consider, but we unfortunately don't have a lot of other guidance aside from that. Sorry.
Well, that was great. Thank you, Leon. All right, so we've got about 4 minutes. So I just have 2 slides to go through. So we're ending perfectly on time, especially for those who, if you're going to go and join the Knauss one-on-one webinar right after this one. So I'm just adding this slide here again, so you can register if you'd like to talk with some Knauss alumni. And Tanya, thank you, dropped the registration link again in our webinar chat. So originally we had added an alumni panel to this webinar, but something new this year is the national office not just hosting one, but a few webinars for you to interact with Knauss alumni. So we figured this was sort of just some great team effort to just have you hop over to the national office and talk with alumni there, so you don't miss out on that opportunity. And again, there is going to be another Knauss Fellowship one-on-one in December and in January as well. So I really encourage you to attend that webinar. And as we kind of been talking about, we are going to be having an application workshop in January. So that's going to be January 10th from 12 to 1:30. And our intention with this workshop is to provide kind of some more one-on-one guidance and more details into the application package. So I kind of gave you a brief overview today, but really diving into the individual sections. And we have some goals for the workshop. We want to also potentially provide some working time with some of our Knauss alumni and alumni from other fellowship opportunities as well. And to just help understand what it is that you should be including in your package, and also looking at our criteria for evaluation. So you can see it from a reviewer perspective and really gain sort of a firsthand perspective of what we're looking for and what are some of those strong applications that make it through, and what is an application maybe missing and why it wouldn't get through. So we really encourage you to attend if you can attend that workshop. And you can, again, register at the link Tanya just dropped. And you can find that information on the RFA on our website as well. But with that, we have 2 minutes, and I just want to say thank you to all of you who were able to attend our webinar today. We are really looking forward to meeting you if you decide you are eligible and want to stick through the process and apply for Knauss 2025. So our job is to support you and to answer questions and to just guide you through the whole process. So we really just want to thank everyone for taking time to meet with us today. And we are going to get 2 minutes back to our day, and also giving those some time if you're hopping over to the other webinar to do that as well. But again, just want to say, if you have questions, to just email us at sgproposal. Tanya dropped it in the chat as well. You apply through EC Grant, so that link has been dropped in our chat, and also just our most up-to-date information for the opportunity on our website. So you can find that link in our chat as well. So thank you so much, everyone, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Hope you have wonderful holidays. It's a busy time, and we hope we can get to connect with you soon. So thank you, everybody. And yeah, we'll be available for questions via email, and this will be, again, recorded, and it's going to be added to our website.